Hi, it's Anne Margolis, the midwife behind Home Sweet Homebirth, here on Facebook, on homesweethomebirth.com. Been a midwife for now over 24 years, and also at Home Sweet Homebirth on Instagram. As promised, I will answer some of the most common questions that you all submitted. And actually, this started from Instagram. I am humbled and amazed by how quickly that community has grown in the last 4 or 5 years. We have over 92.7 thousand like-minded followers around the globe, and I just I'm amazed also by how similar the questions, how common the questions are that I get. I get thousands of questions through Instagram, through email, through the contact part of my website, and the families in my practice. But now it's just around the globe, and of course now we're opening this up to you guys on Facebook. Um, no matter where you live, uh, you're all mamas, and you're all or professionals serving them, and struggling with or questioning the same sort of issues, which is what sort of birthed many of the services that I have, which birthed my book. I have a lot of the questions that you ask are covered in my Natural Birth Secrets book. It became an international bestseller, uh, number one international bestseller. It's on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble, and we're working now on an audiobook, but it does come in Kindle and paperback. It will be coming out in hardback when the second edition comes out. Also, my other book is the Trauma Release Formula, and also an international bestseller, and that has, if you go on my website, homesweethomebirth.com / my new books, you can find out about, more about what they are. But so many of the questions that you're asking are in my book, and actually, the questions that I get all the time sort of birthed a lot of the services that are on my website, like home chat with Anne, for example. People ask me on social media all the time, what do I do for my high blood pressure? My doctor only spends 5 minutes with me, and now is telling me I need to be induced. What do I do? My baby's breech. What can you recommend holistically for to how to treat the virus? I'm depressed. What can you recommend holistically for my depression, or I had a traumatic birth the first time. How can I heal that? How can I have a better birth the second time? I mean, I just get these all the time on social media, and I can't answer these questions. On social media. This is not uh, how I work. It's not professional. It's not safe. I really need to have a conversation with people, and find out more of the information. And there's no like one size fits all. So to really help people personally, more personally, it birthed sort of this online consultation, uh, which is really coming, doing a lot more of, especially with now everything is like so, with telemedicine, everything is online. People can't have access like they normally would to their midwife, or even their OB, or their OB certainly is not going to spend the time answering their questions about how to holistically treat their heartburn, for example, how to holistically help them with their constipation. So there's that. But I definitely suggest you go on my website, because a lot of the questions also that you ask me are covered in my blogs. I mean, every month I write a blog. Like I just posted, one of you asked on about, how can you find out about vaccinations? Well, I posted the link to the blog on that. So you can go on the blog and search, go on Home Sweet Home Birth forward, and there's a link to the blog, and you could, you know, search Group B strep, for example. I mean, there's pretty much a blog on on a lot of these issues and questions that you're bringing up. Also, if you want to get more connected, it sort of birthed this email, this newsletter, the Ask the Midwife. So each month, I offer sort of inspiration to those who subscribe to the newsletter. It will get into your inbox. It's homesweethomebirth.com/ask the midwife. And I cover the most common question I'm getting at that time, and inspiration. And also, there's a lot of other ways to connect, promos and things like that. A lot of you have asked me on these pages about birth plans. Well, you can actually download my free birth plan if you go on homesweethomebirth.com/gift. And there's literally 50 different issues to have a conversation with your partner and dig deep with yourself, to research and discuss with your provider about, do you want these things? Because there's at least 50 different tests and interventions that are offered or just done routinely to moms and babies through the process, from pregnancy, birth, through postpartum. And so it's important to know where you stand on that. And especially nowadays, for those of you who are planning a hospital birth, but even for those of you who are planning a birth center or home birth, what do you want to do with, and it could be as something as simple as, do you want your partner to catch the baby? Do you want to bank cord blood? Do you want to give birth? Do you want to catch your own baby? Do you want to encapsulate your placenta? Do you want the lights dim? If you're in the hospital, you have to be much more specific. But at home, it could be just like, your birth preferences could be more like, we know your midwife is not going to cut the cord immediately, so you don't have to ask her that. For delayed cord clamping, because that's pretty much a given in and out of hospital birth setting. But I've had people say, after they don't want any music, or they want to sing their baby out, they want to laugh their baby out, they want to breathe their baby out, they want to have basically an unassisted free birth as much as possible. So they want us kind of out of the room, which is very much how we support physiologic birth anyway, is allowing for a free unassisted birth, and with us there in the background. But there are people that really want as minimal interference as possible. They don't want to be massaged, and they don't want us in there guiding them until they get maybe into late labor, and then they're like, and come. But anyway, at home there could be much. I had a woman that wrote in her birth preferences, she wants the smell of apple pie baking while she's giving birth. We get those kind of requests in the home birth setting. But in the hospital, you really need to be like, I don't want to be strapped down to a bed. I want intermittent monitoring. I don't want continuous fetal monitoring. I want the lights dim. I don't want my cord cut. I want to take home my placenta. I mean, there's a lot of much more that you have to go into. What do you want to do about the vaccines that are offered in pregnancy or postpartum, the newborn procedures? In many states, you can refuse them for the baby. So anyway, I would definitely look into that. Also, a lot of you are asking about, remedies and what can you take for heartburn or constipation, or what prenatal vitamins I recommend. How can you prevent Group B strep? So basically, all my top picked, hand picked natural remedies and supplements, whole food supplements, natural, and all the holistic remedies that I recommend for pretty much every ailment that a healthy woman would complain to me about and that they need help with. I have an online apothecary. So if you go on homesweethomebirth.com/supplements, you can make an account with this online apothecary. They carry everything. It's really top grade, professional grade, natural, holistic, and you can look for what is recommended under the specific category. So fatigue, anemia, multivitamins, prenatal vitamins, labor, PMS, it's all there, and they're giving people a discount, the Full Script company. So definitely take advantage. Go on the website Home Sweet Home Birth. You could also find all my interviews. I've been interviewed multiple times on many podcasts and summits. Wellness Mama, and there's the Birth Hour, and so many different podcasts and summits. So if you go on the website, you can find them and just listen to them for free. But anyway, let's get down to the questions. So I think I answered the one. One of you asked about, how can you find out about vaccinations? So that's right in my blog, and on Facebook, I think that question was. I put a link directly to that blog, so you could read that. One of you asked about dual care. Do I recommend it? The answer is no. No. None of my clients have ever had dual care. A nurse midwife or a licensed certified midwife are fully capable of seeing a woman and taking care of low risk healthy pregnancy, birth, from the beginning, low risk healthy pregnancy, birth, and postpartum, and never have to see a doctor. You asked about, well, what about if you need an ultrasound? So we discussed that. If everything in a lot of home birth practices, many of these things are elective. There's basics that we do require, of course, to come to prenatal care and to get basic lab tests. Routine ultrasound is considered elective. And even though a lot of people want it, at least want an anatomy scan, we certainly are in all 50 states can write prescriptions for you to have the tests that you need. All the blood work I do in my office, for example, many home birth midwives I know do blood work in their office as well. Any lab tests, but if they don't, the licensed nurse midwives and certified midwives, licensed midwives, can write a prescription for blood work. And the only time that I recommend seeing a physician, for example, is if there's an issue that I need. I think, we need some collaboration on. So, for example, if a woman has hypothyroidism in pregnancy, let's just, I'd like her to just check in with my perinatologist, for example, and he would be managing the thyroid aspect, but she could still have a home birth. There are some nervous first-time moms, for example, or it could be just a first-time home birthing mom, and they just want to meet the doctor. So, the backup situation. So that's just a consultation. Go meet. And my favorite perinatologist, who's backed my practice for many years, used to tell her, he was such a big supporter of home birth until he tragically recently died, which was so sad. But I miss him terribly. But he used to tell everybody, nice to meet you. You're going to get better care with your home birth midwife. I'm here if you need me, but I hope you have a great home birth. And he was that was who he was, and so it was just he was there to answer questions, but there was no need for him to provide any care. When somebody had any health issues, we would either work collaboratively, or rarely I would have to refer. And the mom would, let's say if she developed severe high blood pressure, toxemia, something like, preeclampsia. That's a different story. I'm talking about, a healthy pregnancy. Now, for some of you who are seeing other forms of midwives, it depends on the state. So, for example, CPMs and other types of midwives are not always legal. So some states they are, some states they're not. And so in that case, they may or may not be able to, order and prescribe. So in that case, you might have to do some dual care. I would suggest that you ask, you find out what kind of midwife you have and what the legality is. But nurse midwives and certified midwives, licensed midwives are legal and should be able to write you prescriptions. The reason I can only speak for myself as a CNM, as a legal nurse, certified nurse midwife in my state. I didn't encourage the dual care because I wanted, I think for a woman to be able to birth at home, she needs to be so passionately committed to the midwifery model of care, to the home birth midwifery model of care, trust the process, and not be afraid and think that the midwife is going to miss something or the doctor knows better, or when she starts thinking like that, then I'm concerned about her ability to birth well at home. I mean, I'm usually, I've had a booked practice for well over 20 years, and I was very selective in who I chose, who I accepted into the practice. And really for someone to labor well, they have to really, really trust birth, trust home birth, be comfortable with our backup situation, and not doubt the skill of my team. So there's my answer on the dual care. Overweight and pregnancy. Can you still have a home birth? Of course. But I'm still gonna. I'm still going to counsel you on yes, you can have a home birth, but I would still be very much interested in what you're eating and what your lifestyle is. How are what's your exercise? What's your diet? And that's covered in my book. I go Natural Birth Secrets, and in my online course. The really important thing for you, if you're overweight, is to not gain as much as, let's say, like the average weight gain recommended in pregnancy, let's say 25, 35 pounds. So I would err on the lower side and really be careful about what you're eating. So that means eating real whole food, ideally organic, and really avoiding the junk, the processed foods, refined carbs, white flours, sugars, juices. And so the more that you eat healthy protein, healthy fat, whether you're vegan or many people do, or vegetarian, or paleo. I mean, just think, how our ancestors ate for thousands of years is what they could hunt and what they could gather. So it was a largely plant-based diet. And when we say organic whole food, that's just real food. It's just real food, unprocessed. And yeah, we need to cook it, or but there's plenty of wonderful cookbooks out there, or we could just eat it, to make it really yummy, or real food is yummy, and kind of avoid the middle aisles in the supermarket. And that's just how we ate for thousands of years. And so, it's interesting. Dr. Winston Price was the famous dentist that studied these cultures around the world, these indigenous cultures that were still living like this, and found that not only weren't overweight and they didn't have cavities, but they didn't have the chronic diseases that plague our Western world. So something to think about, right? And also, like our ancestors, we were active, we were moving, we didn't just push buttons and things got done. So there was a lot more manual work that we did. I was filmed in the Human Longevity Project, which was a 9-series documentary. It was just an amazing documentary about the Blue Zone, people that live in certain parts of Costa Rica, southern Italy, Greece, and Okinawa. People that living well into their into their past being 100 years old and still vibrant and without chronic disease and one of the things that they weren't going to gyms, right? But one of the things that we were looking for that these families that these people have in common is eating, is how they ate, like I went over, and also they're active. They're active. It was no big deal for a 98-year-old man to be driving his bike for 8 miles there to and from work twice a day. It was just no big deal. So I know we're in quarantine right now, but we can still find ways to be active. You can take a walk, make it fun, put on some good music, go out there and take a brisk, 30, 45-minute walk on most days. There's online yoga classes. I teach private. I'm a yoga teacher. I teach privates. You can arrange that on my website. You can go on yoga, it's glow.com, which is Yoga Glow, and they have online yoga classes. There's online, such fun, African dance. So it's kukuwafitness.com. African dancing fitness in your room, in your house. So get creative and figure out how to be more active. So, but that being said, if you have a healthy lifestyle, no reason, and everything else as well, of course you can have a home birth. There's another question. It was, how soon after conception is it best to find a midwife? So I have all kinds of families in my practice. I have those who've had 8 babies with me, and they'll call me when they're 20 weeks and say, "Oh, pregnant again," and because they know me already, right? We've done 8 births together. But then I have those who make their preconception visit and say, "We're going to start trying. What can I do naturally, and how can and what tests do I need, and how can I maximize my chances of getting pregnant naturally?" And then I have those who call me as soon as their their urine test is positive, or they see the basal body. If they're charting their cycles, they see the temperature rising beyond the time, beyond 18 days, and then they know they're pregnant. So yeah, I would say, especially if it's your first time doing a home birth or with a midwife, make the appointment on the earlier side. The 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks pregnant is a great time, but you can certainly do that before. But it's really important not, to have prenatal care and to build a relationship with your midwife. Um, and learn, like in my practice, our appointments were, it's mostly talking, yeah, we do the same sort of exam that maybe you would get with old school doctors, because we're not ultrasounding everybody every visit. But we use our hands, and we're checking the same things: blood pressure and baby's position, and how the fundal height, how your uterus is growing. But what we're also checking is, I would say, the biggest part of the appointment is getting to know each other, answering questions. How can you have the healthiest, most amazing experience possible? And every pregnant woman has different issues that they're battling, that they're dealing with, and so we like to address that. And then we talk about all the different tests that pregnant women are, it's either done to them automatically in their OB's office, or with a midwife or an out of hospital midwife. It's many of these are more elective, and so you have to decide: do I want that ultrasound? Do I want to have genetic testing or screen for Down syndrome, or do I want to not? Right? These are all part of the prenatal visit. And a lot of times people bring their family that's not necessarily, or friends, less so now with the pandemic, but we're going to get out of this, and it's going to come back to, families coming to visits with mom, and sometimes dad or partners are just not into the home birth, or mother-in-law is very against it. And bringing them really, a lot of times just gives them space to address their fears, ask their questions, and they see my diplomas on the wall. They see, the office looks very homey, but we're still, so thorough, and we have all the same medical equipment, just tucked behind all the beautiful things in the office. They get to look at the scrapbooks and love letters that we get. Yeah, one of you asked, what are ways that people show thank you for my services? So I would say, well, first of all, aside from payment, right? So, oh my God. We are just, every time I get one of these, my heart is just so full. Yeah, we're showered with what we call love notes. Many of the testimonies I've posted on my website, but I can't post them all, but people write just the most amazing letters to us. I never throw out one. I have a huge basket of scrapbooks that I put these letters in, of people that are just they're just so grateful for and for whatever, the experience, the amazing experience that they had. We get gifts, of course. I have all kinds of interesting gifts. So if you're thinking of thanking your midwife, there's all sorts of things that we like. I've had people give me a gift certificate for a massage. I've had people give me artwork from my office. So there's necklaces now you can get on Amazon. All sorts of necklaces. There's one with the chemical signature of oxytocin, the love hormone. So there's no end. But honestly, it's those notes that just get me. That was. Let's see. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else. Over the years, there's been, like, for example, families who, let's say the partner was a painter. So he said he wanted to, anytime I needed a paint job, he would paint my house. Or there was one who was into cabinets, so he offered to, because he knew I needed new cabinets in my kitchen, and he offered to do that. So he actually did install my kitchen cabinets. So I mean, it's amazing the amount of ways to show gratitude. So, okay, a lot of your questions, let's see, must-haves for home birth, things that midwives prefer but won't ask, unspoken things that would make the experience happier, healthier, how to relax, how to manage pain, questions to ask the midwife, VBAC, Group B strep, prevalence and importance of vitamin K and all the newborn procedures. That's all in my course and on my book. And I just want to emphasize, for those of you who are asking questions that are in my book, in my course, or for any of you really, during this pandemic, if I didn't get to your questions today, for example, but during this pandemic, I want to offer my course at a full $100 off, so it would be $297 instead of $397. And you can go on homesweethomebirth.com, and it's there's a link to it right on my homepage. And if you enter the promo Love My Birth, LOVEMYBIRTH, you will get $100 off on the course, especially today when people are not having. It's a little harder to get out to childbirth courses, but classes in person. But I'm going to leave that promo up during this pandemic. So many people are without work, and I understand, or quarantined, and I understand. That being said, you need to prepare yourselves. Don't wing it, okay? Which brings me to there was a question that somebody asked about transfer rates. My transfer rate has maintained at 7% for many years, from pretty much since 15, 20 years. And the newer I was at home birth, I had a higher transfer rate because I had a higher comfort. I was less comfortable with the gray. A lot of times there's gray area. It's not so obvious. But we are the EMTs, right? We are the emergency. That's like one of the main reasons that we're there, to not just support a mom and the natural physiologic process of undisturbed healthy birth, but should an unpredictable emergency occur, that's why we're there. From postpartum hemorrhage to shoulder dystocia to baby who needs a little jump start resuscitation. But there's gray areas sometimes. It's not so clear. Blood pressure is creeping up a bit, but baby's heart rate's fine. Mommy's not showing any other signs of an issue, so we have to keep an eye on that. There's gray areas. But if somebody, seriously has high blood pressure, or the baby's heart rate is not sounding good, and there's also meconium, for example, it's looking at, you smell one rat, you smell two rats, when you put a bunch of things together, I much prefer a transfer that's not in a crisis, not wait till it becomes an emergency and to get to the hospital. But that rate is still a 7%. So how is it that, and my C-section rate's 5%, which is, it's comparable to most out-of-hospital home birth practices. I would be very suspicious of a practice that has a transfer rate above, much above 10%. The transfers that do occur, why, people ask. So I would say the vast majority of transfers are first-time moms who have not prepared. And I urge you to prepare and not to wing it, because I've done my stats, And it's really boils down to first-time moms, or those first-timers planning a home birth or VBAC. They've never had a natural birth before, and they just don't have they just it end up with, if they don't prepare, those are the ones who are transferring. It's usually stuck labors, non-urgent, and we've tried everything. We have tried everything. The last transfer I brought to the hospital, we had been in labor for 60 hours. Intense labor, and there was nothing left. We've tried everything in our toolkit from A to Z. And this was a family that chose to, just read some books and not really prepare themselves. They just felt like, my body knows how to do it. That's true. Your body does know how to do it. But in the West, there's too much head. There's too much. We're too much in our head. There's too much Googling. There's too much thinking, and we expect everything to be easy. And it's just we're in our culture. We're not surrounded by birth. I've also worked in hospital setting where we had a large immigrant population, and I was amazed by the families that came in from other countries, mostly poor countries. They just came in and they birthed. They at home, they were surrounded. I mean, in their countries that they lived before, they were surrounded by birth. Birth was still is happening at home. In the majority of that is the most women around the world are still giving birth at home, and this is how we did throughout history in community. So women were supporting women, wise elders, the aunts, the grandmothers, the moms, the sisters, are just the women in the community were helping each other. And so there was not this fear of birth, but actually there was this shared wisdom. And so that a woman going into birth, it was, is just familiar with it because she's seen it. She's helped others with it. She's used to it just being part of life. And today we are not like that, especially in the United States and some of the Western countries. We're just too much on, Googling and in our heads, and not as much in our bodies, and so many people are just afraid. And so when there's fear and lack of exposure, is one of the reasons I created my course. Is I created my course because I was interviewed on a podcast several years back by this doula who has this podcast out in San Francisco, and she wanted to know if I traveled because she just loves my approach. And I said, I love to travel, but I'm not a traveling midwife. And so she said, well, her main job is she's in marketing film, and she wants me to come out to San Francisco and film how I bring people through my course, to have to have people breathing their baby out, dancing their baby out, loving their experience no matter how challenging it is, having the most holistically healthy pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. She wanted me to come out and film how I prepare people in my practice, really giving them what works and what, as opposed to what doesn't, and really preparing them and their partners for the whole journey, and to really rock their birth and their experience. And so I took her up on it, and I went out and we filmed it in Point Reyes, California, and that's I put my heart and soul into that course. And so it's got years and years and years and years and years and thousands of mamas of wisdom that I'm offering to you in that course, just without the hands-on care. So again, you can put in the promo Love My Birth and you'll get $100 off. Let's see, some other questions. Suturing. One of you asked about suturing. So first degree, well, first of all, many, we can do prenatally in pregnancy. There's a lot of things that I have moms do to prevent, for example. There's ways of stretching. I love this Epino device, which is, this is like this balloon that inflates in the vagina to the size of the baby's head, and you do it gradually. It's like exercise. It's like sort of like yoga, right? In the beginning, or dance, right? In the beginning, you're not flexible. You can't touch your toes, right? But with more and more practice, the muscles stretch. But if you stretch them suddenly, they might tear. And Epino was created in Germany, and it's used around the world. There was a woman who came to my practice years ago from Israel. She said her home birth midwife in Israel would not attend a first-time vaginal birth if the mom had not used it. There's a lot of research on it, and it's and I actually spoke to this midwife. She's very passionate about it. Not only does it it lessens the length of pushing, it reduces fetal distress during second stage of labor, and it certainly reduces tearing because over the course of 3 weeks, the last 3 weeks before baby is due to come, the woman is gradually stretching her vaginal perineal muscles. And I'm like, oh, I just couldn't believe that we have to give birth by doing, by sticking balloons and stretching our vaginal muscles. But as a yoga teacher, as a dancer myself, I understand that concept of the benefit of stretching. And also it gives women an idea of what it feels like. Like you tell a man, you try pushing a bowling ball out through your nostril, right? Women have no idea, but it's a very intense sensation if they're in the beginning, if they're not prepared for it, or if they've never given birth before, and even if they've had given birth before, they know that it's a very intense sensation. But I've seen that really reduce the incidence of tearing, as are certain birthing positions that I talk about in my course and in my book, and ways of not force pushing, but gently sort of releasing the baby out and waiting until you feel the urge to push, not when you're fully dilated, honoring that resting phase. So in terms of tearing, sometimes we can do whatever, all that, and a woman will still tear because baby comes out like this. Or, there's so many different reasons, right? Most abrasion, minor tears and first degree tears heal beautifully by themselves. I don't need to repair them. Second degree, absolutely needs repair. We just had a woman post on the Facebook group about she had an unassisted free birth, and she ended up with a terrible infection from having just this second degree tear that was just left without any professional to repair it. So I do repair second degree tears, sulcus tears, and the more serious tears. Absolutely. We can give local anesthetic, and your midwife should have local anesthetic and suturing for the tears that do need to be repaired. Let's see. There was a question about postpartum hemorrhage. So with each family, I discuss ways in which we can prevent postpartum hemorrhage. And that's, I check everybody's CBC and their iron stores, their ferritin, so that make sure that they do have reserves for the blood loss at birth, which could be a half a liter, and then at more or more, postpartum there's quite heavy bleeding, and then it starts to taper down. There are also, in terms of evidence-based care, There's what is called active versus expectant management. Active management is practiced pretty much routinely. There is a lot of evidence to support its reduction in postpartum hemorrhage, but a lot of the home birthing moms don't want to do that, but some do, and it involves an injection of oxytocin or pitocin after the birth, and encouraging the birth of the placenta much more quicker than just sort of waiting till it comes on its own. And usually it comes on its own within the hour. But there's definitely natural things that women can do to encourage that. Emptying your bladder and breastfeeding, and makes your own oxytocin, and squatting and resting, and there's certain herbs. And in the pregnancy, I forgot to finish the sentence before, but in the pregnancy I have them build up, make sure that they're iron, and they take greens, and they have some sort of green supplement to build up other nutrients that are necessary for clotting. But your midwife should absolutely know how to manage a postpartum hemorrhage. First of all, if as a midwife we see that none of the natural modalities are working, I'm not going to wait until the mom is bleeding so heavily that she loses consciousness and is at risk of losing her life. I'm not going to wait for that. I'm watching very closely if there's signs of uterine atony, which means the uterus is not contracting, no matter what we're doing, no matter the herbs and the breastfeeding and the emptying the bladder. I have the hemorrhage medications that are carried in any freestanding birth center. I can't do a blood transfusion at home. I've never had to, but sometimes I've had to give these medications. And sometimes I've had to start IV. So your midwife absolutely should have IV and IV fluids and these emergency medications. Anyway, I can't get to all your questions. There's so many, but we can do this once a month. And anyone that has more personal questions can schedule a consult with me, and I'm happy to go over it. And again, just to remind you, because of the pandemic, I'm offering a promo code to all of you in this group. If you go on homesweethomebirth.com/loveyourbirth, if you just go on homesweethomebirth.com, you'll see a link to the online course called Love Your Birth, and you use the promo code LOVEMYBIRTH, and you'll get $100 off. Blessings to you. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I didn't get to every question today, but I know people don't have time to listen. Well, maybe you do because of the quarantine, to listen to long videos. But again, I'm going to do these monthly, and you can submit your questions. And blessings to you all. Stay healthy, stay safe.